Hello, my name is Erica Mercer, and I am presenting my criminology project on Ted Kaczynski. Ted Kaczynski was born on May 22nd, 1942 in Chicago, Illinois. He is a white male of Polish descent. His parents were both Polish Americans, and he would later become infamously known as the Unabomber. A little bit about his background. He did grow up in sort of a challenging environment. His parents, especially his mother, were was known as very strict, and his childhood was marked by isolation and a sense of being different from his peers. This had a lot to do with his superior intellect. Um, the early experiences that he had contributed to a troubled upbringing, fostering feelings of alienation and resentment that I think would later shape his life. After he excelled academically in sixth grade, his IQ was tested. It was very high. It was above, way above average. He was skipped up grades. He actually graduated high school by the age of 16 and had actually been accepted into Harvard University at 16 and kind of was shipped off from his family and his brother at that time. He did attend Harvard University where he earned a degree in mathematics and later he earned a PhD and began a brief academic career. His PhD, he was teaching at University of California, Berkeley. However, kind of soon after that, he decided to, leave society kind of behind, and he moved to a remote cabin in Montana, and that is where he kind of made his decision to start this kind of violent campaign against what he viewed as the destructive forces of modern technology and industrial society. So, over nearly 2 decades, he orchestrated a bombing campaign. He targeted individuals connected to technology and industry, and this resulted in 3 deaths and dozens of injuries. He wrote a manifesto in 1995 that was titled Industrial Society and Its Future, and this outlined his ideology and garnered widespread attention and ultimately led to his capture in 1996. So, Ted was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole, where he spent the remainder of his life. He died last year, June 10th, at the age of 81. While Ted's life is often examined through the lens of his criminal actions, it also kind of raises important questions about the impacts of trauma, isolation, and radicalization in society. We're going to talk a little bit. Sorry, I should have been going through this. So, this is his family and a picture of him when he was arrested. As you can see, his brother and his parents there, and later, him himself and his brother when he was headed to Harvard. Next, we're going to talk a little bit about his criminal activity. So they began in the late 1970s and continued into the mid 1990s. His campaign primarily targeted individuals that were associated with modern technology and industrial society. And this kind of ranged over the course of about 17 years. He is responsible for a series of bombings across the United States, which claimed 3 lives and injured 23 others. His victims were carefully chosen, so there was a pattern. He chose professors, researchers, and even some airline executives. For example, in 1985, he killed Hugh Scruton, who was an owner of a California computer store. And in 1993, he claimed the life of John Hauser, who was a man connected to a technology-related firm. His rationale for targeting these individuals kind of stemmed from his belief that technological advancement was dehumanizing and damaging to society. So in his mind, they kind of represented the very forces that he opposed. Ted employed various methods to carry out his attacks. He often sent homemade bombs through the mail, and his first one was sent in 1978. He continued his campaign off and on, which kind of created a pattern that demonstrated a meticulous and calculated approach. The devices varied in complexity, but were designed to inflict maximum harm. One of the most chilling aspects of Ted's crimes was the anonymity that he maintained for years. So it wasn't until he published his manifesto, The Industrial Society and Its Future, in 95, that authorities began to kind of connect the dots. He demanded that his manifesto be published and threatened further violence if his demands were not met. He also said that he would end his campaign of violence if his manifesto was published. So that kind of increased the media attention, and it, like I said, it ultimately played a crucial role in his capture. In 96, Ted was arrested. He was arrested at his cabin in Montana, and there investigators found evidence that linked him to the bombings, mainly the materials used to construct the devices. His trial was in 1998, and it revealed a pretty complex man whose intellectual ability was kind of overshadowed by his violent actions. Ultimately, Ted pled guilty to all the charges. He avoided the death penalty and was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. He spent his remaining years there incarcerated, like I said. So next, we're kind of talk about the theory that was attached to Ted's actions and his criminal actions. So it kind of, with his, when we examine his actions, we're kind of faced with difficult questions about how society handles like dissent and the extremes to which ideology can drive individuals. His life serves as a cautionary tale, kind of reminding us of the dangers posed by isolation, radicalization, and the consequences of unchecked anger against societal structures. So next, I'd like to discuss the theory, as I said, that it was attached to Ted. The social control theory primarily was developed by sociologist Travis Hershey. Travis lived from 1935 to 2017, and this theory explores why individuals conform to societal norms and avoid engaging in criminal activities. So the social control theory is considered a macro level theory because it examines societal structures and their influence on individual behavior. It states that our bonds to society, such as family, school, community, all of that plays a larger role in controlling our impulses and guiding us toward conformity. At the heart of this theory is the idea that those strong social bonds lead to a lower likelihood of deviance. And according to the social control theory, a person commits crime because their bonds to society are weak or absent. So when individuals lack those strong attachments to their family or community or their social institutions, or when their commitments to conventional values and norms are diminished, they may feel less constrained by societal expectations. And this lack of connection reduces their motivation to conform and increases the likelihood of engaging in deviant behavior. So essentially, without the protective influence of those strong social ties, individuals may, they may fall into those impulses and choose to break the law. In social control theory, attachment and commitment are two key elements that help explain why individuals conform to societal norms and avoid deviant behavior. And the first one we're going to talk about is attachment. So attachment refers to the emotional bonds individuals have with other people, such as their family, friends, and mentors. Their strong attachments foster a sense of belonging and accountability. And so, sorry. So when people feel connected to those around them, they're less likely to engage in behavior that could harm those relationships. And the emotional connection acts as a kind of like a deterrent against deviance because individuals do not want to disappoint or hurt the people they care about. The second one of those key elements is commitment, and commitment relates to the investment a person has in conventional activities such as like their education, their career, their family life. And when individuals have those significant stakes in these areas, they are more likely to adhere to the societal norms to protect what they have built. For instance, someone who is committed to their education or career is far less likely to take risks that could jeopardize their success. How this relates to Ted is that in the case of Ted, we can see how lack of strong attachment and commitment contributed to his criminal behavior. Ted experienced a troubled upbringing characterized by strict parenting, social isolation. He never built those really strong bonds with his family or his peers because, he jumped ahead in school. When he jumped ahead, those older kids kind of picked on him and they were not friends with him. They did not accept him. And then by 16, he is, shipped off to Harvard, and those family ties none of that ever really bonded with him. He never built any of those strong ties. And so his emotional bonds with the family were weak. He often felt alienated from the peers, and this led to a profound sense of isolation. And this detachment likely diminished the influence of societal norms that would typically deter someone from engaging in the violence. Additionally, Ted's commitment to conventional societal structures was notably absent. While he had academic achievements, he rejected the mainstream society and retreated to that, lone existence in that remote cabin. And this withdrawal eliminated his investments in community, family, and career, making him more susceptible to radicalizing beliefs. And it ultimately led to his violent actions against individuals he thought was part of the problem he opposed. Two of the other theories that could apply to Ted that stuck out to me anyway was the strain theory and labeling theory. And I'm going to explain this a little bit. So strain theory, developed by Robert Merton, says that societal pressures and the inability to achieve culturally approved goals can lead individuals to resort to deviant behavior. Ted's radical beliefs about technology and industrial society suggested that he felt alienated from mainstream culture and possibly experienced strain as he struggled with societal expectations. His actions could be seen as a response to the frustration that he felt regarding his inability to effect change through conventional means. The labeling theory, I can see that as being a part of it too. And although most of his labeling came maybe after his criminal actions occurred, you can also see how some of these labeling may have, some of this labeling may have affected him early on as well, as far as, being an outcast and a loner and, those types of labeling. So labeling theory kind of focuses on how being labeled as deviant can influence an individual's self-identity and behavior. Ted's rejection of societal norms and his eventual identification as the Unabomber could have reinforced his deviant identity. And once labeled, individuals may kind of embrace that deviance as part of their self-concept, which leads them to act out in ways that align with their perceived identity. So that is the end of my presentation on Ted Kaczynski, and I just want to thank you for listening. Have a great night.